The Lady of the Dunes. In the Race Point Dunes in Provincetown, Massachusetts, on July 26, 1974, a 12-year-old girl was chasing after her barking dog when she came across the disfigured body of a woman. We are about to talk about the brutal murder of the woman tagged as the Lady of the Dunes, but before we start, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. The victim, who police were unable to positively identify, gained the moniker Lady of the Dunes. Ruth Marie Terry, a native of Tennessee who was 37 years old at the time of her murder, was ultimately identified as the victim on October 30th, nearly 50 years after her death. Genetic genealogy techniques were utilized, which included a combination of DNA testing and profiling with conventional genealogical analysis to trace family trees. This technique was also utilized in the 2018 identification of the Golden State Killer, former police officer Joseph James DeAngelo. The FBI claims that Terry was born in 1936 and has connections to California, Massachusetts, and Michigan. She is also a daughter, sister, aunt, wife, and mother. For privacy reasons, and because police are still looking into the murder, no other information has been published. While we have identified Ruth as the victim of this horrific murder, it does not ease the pain for her family. Nothing can, said Boston FBI Special Agent Joseph Bonavolonta at a press conference announcing the identification. While we keep looking for her murderer, at least these should provide some answers. This is, without a doubt, a huge breakthrough in the inquiry that should help us find the perpetrator. The Lady of the Dunes was discovered that fateful summer day naked and face down in some tall grass. The young girl who discovered her mistook her for a deer at first. Decomposition and insect activity on the body suggested she had been dead for at least 2 weeks. She was nearly beheaded in a horrific strangling, but blunt force trauma to the side of the head was ultimately determined to be the cause of death. Although there was no indication of a fight, there were signs of a sexual assault that had occurred sometime after death. The angle of the impact to the head suggests that her assailant was sleeping close to her at the time. Several of her teeth had been extracted, and she was missing both hands and one forearm. Her gravestone reads, "Unidentified female body found Race Point Dunes, July 26, 1974. It was placed at St. Peter's Cemetery, which is located in the city center." Provincetown, Massachusetts, made a discovery that sparked a mystery that has kept detectives busy for decades. However, a major obstacle has been removed. The FBI said on Monday that they had identified the victim, the woman who had become known as the Lady of the Dunes, Ruth Marie Terry, a 37-year-old woman from Tennessee. She was the oldest victim of a homicide in Massachusetts, whose identity was unknown. Authorities conducted a news conference only hours after telling Miss Terry's family, and the discoveries sparked a frenzy of new questions in a case that has baffled detectives for decades, captivated the imaginations of innumerable armchair sleuths, and may even have Hollywood ties. The name of the man, the Lady of the Dunes, married a few months before her death, was released by detectives 2 days after they revealed her identity. They asked for further information, but the details that are already accessible only make the story of Guy Rockwell Moldovan, who passed away in 2002, even hazier. He was rumored to have been involved in the death of at least one of his wives, and appeared to be a master of all manipulations across the country. The real identity of Lady of the Dunes. Ruth Marie Terry was born on September 8, 1936, in a little cabin on a mountainside in Whitwell, Tennessee, to Johnny and Eva Terry. Eva died when Ruth was only 23 years old. Terry's 1957 marriage didn't last, so he left Whitwell to take a job at the Fisher Body Auto Plant in Livonia, Michigan. She gave birth to her son Richard in 1958, but she was unable to provide for him. In exchange for Richard Hanchett Sr.'s financial support, she agreed to let him adopt her son. Terry eventually relocated from Livonia to California after the adoption was finalized. Terry tried to get in touch with her son after he went into a coma from a heroin overdose and didn't come out of it for 18 days, but he was still not ready to meet her. She tied the knot with Guy Rockwell Moldovan, a Reno, Nevada, antique merchant, on February 16, 1974. The pair had traveled to Whitwell to see her relatives 4 months before her death. Brittany Novoglonsky, Ruth's grandniece, noted that Terry wasn't herself when she was with Moldovan, who was jealous of Ruth. Terry's half-brother Kenneth and his wife Carol were the next people they saw in Chattanooga. They remembered that Terry and Moldovan had mentioned their plans to search for antiques across the country. As they were departing, Kenneth said they brought up the subject of moving back to Massachusetts. Moldovan went back to Tennessee in the late summer of 1974 to break the news to Terry's family that she had vanished from their California house. Jan Terry, her sister-in-law, claims that he just stayed a short while and said he had no idea where Terry was. James, Terry's brother, hired a private detective and flew to California to track her down. The private investigator told Terry's family that she had joined a religious cult and left the state voluntarily, with all of her possessions sold. For 20 years before she was found, Terry's name appeared in family obituaries as deceased. Carol speculated that she was unable to reach her loved ones because she was participating in a witness protection program. The police searched through thousands of missing person cases and a registry of authorized vehicles that had been in the area, but they did not find any matches. The beach blanket and sand were not moved from the area where her body was discovered, suggesting that she may have been moved there. Extensive searches of the nearby dunes turned up no other evidence, apart from the trousers, bandana, blanket, and ponytail holder. A Canadian woman in 1987 confided in a friend that she had witnessed her father committing murder in 1972 in Massachusetts. The police looked everywhere for the woman, but couldn't find her. Another female witness informed authorities that the victim's reconstruction resembled her missing sister from Boston in 1974. The investigators also pursued a lead involving the murder victim's age, 25 at the time, and missing criminal Rory Jean Kessinger. The police concluded that Kessinger looked like the victim. Kessinger's mom's DNA, however, did not match the murder victim. In 1979, a clay likeness of the woman's face was made. Although her skull was not buried at the time, her body was unearthed and examined in 1980. In March of 2000, the corpse was dug up again for DNA analysis. A CT scan was performed on her head in May of 2010 to gather images for another reconstruction by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The victim was identified by DNA testing of distant relatives after the skeletal remains were sent to Othram in 2022. The Boston FBI office confirmed Ruth Marie Terry as the victim on October 31, 2022. Neither the identity of the killer nor the circumstances surrounding Terry's murder in Massachusetts have been made public. The FBI said that they were able to determine Terry's identity by employing investigative genealogy, the same process that had been utilized to identify the Golden State Killer and more than 150 other criminals. As of October 2022, the Massachusetts State Police, MSP, are treating the incident as a homicide investigation. Around the time of the victim's presumed death, authorities in 1981 found that a lady who resembled the deceased had been seen with mobster Whitey Bulger. Bulger was notorious for taking the teeth of his victims. There is no evidence linking him to Bulger, and he was killed while incarcerated in 2018. Local serial killer Tony Costa was an early suspect, but he was eventually ruled out. On May 12, 1974, Costa passed away. In July 1974, the body was discovered. Haddon Clark, the murderer, admitted his guilt by saying, "I could have informed the cops what her name was, but when they beat the shit out of me, I wasn't going to tell them shit." My grandfather's garden is where the police are seeking clues to an unsolved murder. Clark has allegedly been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, a disorder that can cause a person to make false confessions to crimes. Clark wrote a buddy a letter in 2004 confessing to the murder of a woman on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. He also included 2 sketches. One depicted a naked woman lying on her stomach, the other a map showing the location of the body. Clark allegedly led officers to a graveyard in April of 2000, where he told them he had buried 2 people 20 years before. He claimed to have committed further murders in several states throughout the 1970s and 1990s. Thank goodness he was caught. Make sure to share this video with your friends. We would also like you to give this video a like and subscribe to this channel.